So, well, hi there. I'm Diana Montford, the world's first transgender television journalist. Born male, became female, and here I am. Anyway, my guest is the fabulous Ms. Melissa Sklarz, a woman of transgender experience and the first transgender woman in New York State politics. And she got me into it, and John Principali. And if anyone else wishes to come into it, I'm sure you'd be happy to mentor them. Anyway.
I have mentored a new generation of young transgender women. I'm not convinced anymore that doing the inside game is better than being an outsider and shaking your fist and shaking things up.
Which is what I do.
Yes.
Yes. I tried politics. It wasn't for me. I'm too much of an iconoclast. Politics is a very corporate world, and if you're not willing to be a corporate person, you're very good at being a corporate person because you actually are a corporate person in real life. So politics works for you. But us dyed-in-the-wool revolutionaries, power to people's skin, we're not good at being in politics. But anyway, it was an interesting time I had in it, and it broadened my horizons.
You were an unforgettable presence in Albany and in City Hall here in New York.
Yeah, especially when I got drunk at parties and newly elected Supreme Court justices would stick their tongues down my throat while their wives watched with beatific smiles on their faces. That actually happened. Anyway, this is where our tax dollars go, folks. Anyway, I won't tell you about the married politicos who sidled up to me and said, "So how about it? Want to meet me at a hotel?" No, I don't, actually. I really don't. But
filled with stories, are you?
Memories that bless and burn. Oh, honey, I could tell you. Not to worry, gentlemen, my lips are sealed. I don't want to wind up in a cement brazier, you know. So, no, I know nothing. I see nothing. God forbid, I know nothing. But anyway, Houston, Texas, bad Houston. They have passed a law that basically discriminates against LGBT folk. Now, the mayor of Houston is a lesbian, an out lesbian. Sadly, she's being term limited out. She's had her 3 terms, and she is bereft that this law that she worked so hard to get on the books has now been taken off the books by referendum, which is too hideous to contemplate. They smile at us to our faces, but behind our backs, they vote against us. That's terrible.
In Texas, they don't smile at their faces. You know, Anise Parker made this, passed this law in Texas, in Houston in 2014.
Yes.
Her opponents took her to court. And in Texas, their politics are very, very reactionary. And her opponents won and demanded that the rights of the minority people of Houston be put on a ballot to be voted by the majority, which is what happened. It wasn't just trans people, it wasn't LGBT, it was all minority people, racial and religious and cultural minorities.
Which is very strange because in Texas, they have a huge Latino population, so I'm not even sure that they're the minority.
And in Houston, when they voted on it and the votes were counted, the law was rescinded by a 2-to-1 margin. It's unbelievable.
It really is in this day and age. Do the people of Houston not realize that they're on the wrong side of history?
You know what? When the bill first came out and they took a look at it, and there was a press conference, and you had all the different representatives of the coalition, and from what I've heard, a woman was asked a question by a reporter, does this bill mean that men can now go into a ladies' bathroom? And her response was yes. And from that moment on, all the rest of it became irrelevant.
They have been using that argument since the dawn of time. That is how they defeated the Equal Rights Amendment in 1974. Their argument is that a cisgender heterosexual man will don a wig and a dress and go into a ladies' room and attack innocent women and say, well, I'm transgender, I'm allowed to use the ladies' room. And that is the most ridiculous argument ever, and it always works. That's what's so horrifying. It always works. People can't possibly be that naive. I think they choose to let it work.
I think when a majority votes on the rights, civil rights of a minority, it always ends badly for minorities. We have a long history of doing that. That's why civil
Proposition 8
rights
in California, that was appalling. In California, no less.
That's why these decisions are done at the court level, where people will get the best lawyers and they'll argue in court about equal justice under the law. And you take away the emotions, and you take a civil rights for minority bill and turn it into a sexual predator bathroom protection bill, which is what they did in Houston, which is a very cosmopolitan city. It's the largest city in Texas, and the vast defeat is unfortunate for everyone, even us here in New York.
Why here in New York? Why is it unfortunate?
It sends a message. What it does is it undoes, it does all the work that we've done based on logic and common sense, and it shows people that this theme of transgender inclusion into our culture and lifestyle has value, and it sends the opposite message.
Do you think that this bill will be rescinded anytime soon? It being unconstitutional, do you think it will go to the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm always so shocked that I know people in Texas. I know a lot of people in Texas, and they keep saying that there are more and more progressive people. There more and more immigrants are building a foundation for a life, and the politics of Texas are going to change, and yet their leaders become more and more reactionary. I am confounded. I remember when Ann Richards was the governor of Texas.
Great governor.
And I remember when this boob named George Bush ran, and he did great.
He was
and
born
won.
with a silver foot in his mouth. Yes.
And he won, and he served 2 terms, and then he became our president for 8 years. And
and dragged us into a nightmarish Orwellian fascistic horror that it will take us decades, perhaps a century, to recover from. Everyone says that George H.W. Bush II was the worst president we've ever had. Let's hope that's true. Anyone worse than Bush would be hellish. But do you think that that there's any chance that this will be repealed?
In the states in the South and in parts of the Midwest, what they're doing is the state legislatures are passing laws, and the governors, Republican governors, are signing it, that prevents local cities from passing civil rights law, just like what has happened here. So we don't have, in the Northeast, we don't have thinking like this, but in a lot of places they do.
We may, but it's covert. It's not as overt as it is in Texas.
We, at least in the courts, we have equal protection. Changing the law and changing the culture are 2 different things. It's really hard to change the culture. It's great if people fit the confines of what is male and what is female, and then those people are going to get along. But people that transgress those gender boundaries don't have the same kind of ease and cultural stability.
Yes, but that system is a social construct. There is no such thing as masculine behavior, feminine behavior. It varies culture to culture, time to time. Obviously, it is a complete social construct.
And yet what we're seeing is that in parts of the country, people are legislating based on that. And what they do is people like me, people like us are always going to be in the minority. And we get to be judged by people that have no understanding of what it's like to look in the mirror
that's not
and
unlike
see a stranger.
Men making rules for women's bodies and women's vaginas and women's uteri. Would it be uteri? It can't be uteruses. Anyway, it seems to be a rich, white, conservative man's country, the U.S., and everyone else is treated as though they were unwanted guests. And we vote too. and they don't realize this.
Well, and in our parts of the country where we're the majority, things are changing. I'm less surprised about the movement, the tide of history, than I am about these pockets of reactionary thinking that seem to get by again and again. Like you, I'm just shocked, really, that there are still parts of the country where people continue to look backward to the 1950s as a guide for who we should be today.
The genie is out of the bottle. They cannot put it back in. Don't they realize this?
No, no. They, all the advances. Our Supreme Court and it's the Roberts Court. They've unleashed unlimited money into the political system. They've taken the restraints on civil rights voting now, and we're back into the 1950s with that. Since God's not going to make any more Republicans, they want to make it really hard for the Democrats to vote, and they get away with it. My opinion, we have another census coming up in 2020.
Yes.
And this one will be online, and so that all the ways that the reactionary people can prevent the census, which is in the Constitution, will be diminished. So hopefully we will have a much, much different census that'll show a very, very different change in America.
In the 2010 census, where it said sex, I put down that I was transgender and that I was born male and became female. I wrote it in.
2010 was in the aftermath of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, and somehow all these people got all riled up over it. And when the census came out and the redistricting was done, and these states in the South and in the Midwest were able to elect huge, gigantic Republican majorities and have rolled the clock back ever since.
Well, look at what they did with the Voting Rights Act. They fixed it so that Jim Crow is alive and well and living in many states, and that is unfathomable in the 21st century. It's unbelievable.
Yes, I agree. There are parts in the South that they've had moderate leadership, and now they've elected reactionary leadership, and the first thing they do is they take away the voting rights of the young, the old, and the poor and make it really hard. And soon we'll be back to poll tests and poll taxes, and only certain IDs are acceptable where others are not. And all it does is just make it harder and harder for people to vote. And generally those people are Democrats.
Can we do something to stop that, to make sure that the democratic process is indeed the democratic process and not the faux democratic process?
I think that the makeup of the current Supreme Court makes it really hard to see any kind of change. It's the idea that this Supreme Court supported the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. It supported the marriage equality and did away with DOMA. History is marching on. History is, and don't ask, don't tell. History is marching on. The law is going to make it really hard for them to continue to look backwards and not look forwards.
Good. So we have hope.
I have hope, certainly. And you do too, Diana, because I've known you for a long time.
Yes. I am a stupid idealist, I must say. But anyway, what to the people in Texas, to the people who are being hurt by this rescinded bill, what would you say to those people? The frightened LGBT folk, the frightened Latinos, people of color, but especially our people, the T people, the trans people. Is there anything you can say to these people? They might be watching now. We're seen everywhere. What would you say to these people?
Wow. People in Dallas and in Austin and in San Antonio are all protected by law. I have no idea. Where are transgender people supposed to go to the bathroom in Houston? And what are going to be the penalties if they get caught? So they've rescinded this law. What happens to trans men? Are they supposed to use the ladies' room? And what happens to people like us, the idea of using the men's room? I think people are going to have to continue to fight. They're going to have to fight their normal Texas way And what they're going to see, they're going to be seeing a change, and it'll be soon. I'm optimistic that the 2020 census will go in our favor.
If a trans man goes into a ladies' room, he will be arrested for being a man going into a ladies' room, even though he was assigned the female gender at birth.
Which is supposed to be what this law was supposed to protect.
If we trans women go into a men's room, it's entirely possible that we will be arrested for solicitation. They will take it for granted that we are prostitutes. There is no way to win. And this law is so obviously unjust and wrong and discriminatory that it is grotesquely unconstitutional. Don't you agree?
Yes, I do. And now I imagine what they're going to do. But it's the will of the people. Well, will of the people was Proposition 8 in California. Yes. So they're going to sue. They're going to have to sue. But it's the courts of Texas that created this situation to begin with. The way the conservatives control the courts in Texas mean that it's going to be very hard in this framework of time to really make a change. It's the courts that have created the system that to have the majority.
Issue a law that would prevent any state, city, or county, any municipality from passing this kind of law?
What? I don't know.
Because the next week they can say, well, you know what? Let's lynch blacks. People, what do you think? You want to lynch blacks? They say, yes, sir, we do. We surely do. Yes, sir, we do. We're going to lynch them. You know what?
That's against the law.
Well, that's against the law. But they can lynch trans people, in effect. See what I mean?
Yeah, I have no idea. The last time I was called out of a ladies' room was in Greenwich Village, probably about 12 or 13 years ago. And I thought it was amusing. I was with a friend and he was outraged. And so I called people who called the governor and they changed the law, but
I'm lucky to say I have never been asked to leave a ladies' room, but that's because I swagger in with my short hair and they think that can't be a trans person. No trans woman would wear a crew cut and walk like that and have an obvious looking for trouble attitude,
Diana Montford, you are one of a kind.
Yes, in a sense, and so are you.
Yes.
How do you mean that I'm one of a kind? I want to hear this.
You are unmistakably unique. You have created your own essence that.
I am my own gender. Yes.
No, you are your own person, certainly, and. I have no idea what they're going to do in Texas in the face of stuff like this. It is so reactionary and backwards. It goes against everything we know, everything we think, everything we read, everything we understand, and yet it still happens. So I don't know what the next step is. I know that there are fierce activists in Houston and in Texas.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And many of them are journalists, which is very nice.
And
LGBT journalists, but journalists. And
straights. There are no progressive person anywhere in America thinks this is a good idea and thinks it's moral. So they not only did this conservative coalition make this happen, both their governor and lieutenant governor tweeted in favor of defeating this bill and helped celebrate when the bill was defeated. And that's hard to understand. How does this help Houston? The Super Bowl is supposed to be in Houston in 2017.
It won't be. It can't be.
And now you have Houston's going out of its way to discriminate against minorities. And when you try to give minorities a basic platform for civil rights, the voters of Houston say, no, thank you.
Well, that's too bad. This is the U.S., and they're not allowed to say no thank you.
I don't, you ask a simple question about whether the president has used civil rights legislation. What this President Barack Obama has done for LGBT people, what he's done for transgender people has been extraordinary. He has our laundry list of needs. He has gone through the list. He has done almost everything. The platform has been laid, and now the time is for the culture to change.
I would imagine it sort of has, except among the conservative Republicans. And even they, I mean, Dick Cheney's daughter's a lesbian. So, really, I mean,
they're appealing to their political base. I guess they have data. They've spent a great deal of money. They know exactly who they're appealing to, and that's these conservative Christians. It's rural and suburban homeowners. It's men. It's white men. And they know very clearly who their base is. And a lot of their policy is supposed to appeal to that. Like you, I have no understanding
they're
of it.
being totally cynical. They laugh at these people, their voters, who are so conservative and Christian and all that, these born-again folk. The sophisticated politicians, while banging their girlfriends away from their wives, are laughing at the conservative people, yet they pander to them when they want votes.
I say all the time that Republicans are cynical and believe nothing what they say, and Democrats are naive and they believe everything that they say. So I'm at a loss, you know. I would like to think that they will elect the next leadership within Texas that will change their thinking. These districts are so gerrymandered. The Democrats are pushed together in very large districts, and the Republicans are in very small districts, and they are geared to elect Republicans for the next 20 years, and it's like that all over in this part of the country, and it seems to be very successful.
Which is horrifying. It's very sad.
That is why we live in New York.
Well, yes, but we live in New York because our family settled here.
I'm the only one of my family that still lives in the East. All the rest of my family is out and about.
Oh, well. Anyway, but everyone can't move to New York, obviously, you know, and certainly not with the cost of living, the high cost of living, and the lack of affordable housing and other.
I firmly believe that the social media revolution that is upon us, that a whole generation is online and creating communities together, will change the world. The millennial generation is already so dramatically different from the generations before it. Some will eventually sell out, but in the end, they are changing the way young Americans look at America and our culture.
They said that of our baby boomer generation, remember? And we did change the world.
Yes.
And that's
yes,
great.
we did. Yes. And some of us did sell out, but some of us are still here today fighting the good fight.
Yeah, really. Anyway, and damn broke because of it. Thank you.
And then there's that.
Yes, but whatever. I wouldn't know what to do with money anyway. What the hell? I'm happy. I've always been poor. I don't care. Anyway, it's what I'm used to, you know. Anyway, my guest has been the fabulous Miss Melissa Sklarz, who is a lady of transgender experience. She is truly an historical figure. She is the first transgender person, man or woman, in New York State politics, and she's wonderful at mentoring people, well, anyone who wants to be in politics, but certainly trans women who want to be in politics. She mentored me, she mentored Joanne Principali, and no doubt would mentor any other trans person who wished to go into politics.
2 years ago, we had a trans man here in New York City who ran for the city council. He did very well, trans man, but he did not win.
Mel Wymore. We had him on our show, yes.
You know, right now, I'm still looking for transgender people to get elected to office. There's a transgender judge in Oakland, but there are so few of us that have really been able to get elected to public office.
Yes.
I've been elected at Democratic Party posts throughout the city.
Oh, I'm a member of the New York County Democratic Committee now, right this second as we speak. But that's not...
But, well, it's something. But still, public office would be terrific. I now know that there's a gal that elected to her city council in a small... I should have done more research on it. So there is a trans gal that's been elected to the city council in her small city. So that's something.
Yeah.
We need more trans people being elected. I know Amanda Simpson ran for the state legislature in Arizona, and Dana Beyer ran for the state legislature in Maryland, and now we've got a gal upstate. I think Shauna O'Toole is running for the state senate here in New York, but she's running as a minor party. It would be great if we could elect transgender people to office. It did miraculous work for gays and lesbians when they started winning elections.
Right. But, of course, trans people often find life so challenging because of the lack of employment, the prejudice just every day, that you really have to give a lot to politics. And some people just have such a challenging life that there just isn't enough left to give to politics.
Young trans women and men are demanding the opportunities. They're not asking anymore, they're demanding. We're starting to see trans-run groups throughout the city. They're very small, but they're growing. But
do they have any power, or are they devalued because they are trans-run?
Yes, they have power. Was probably the first trans person in New York to be on community board. Now there are others being appointed both uptown and in the Bronx. Trans people are getting known to the elected officials. No longer is it unusual for transgender people and elected officials to come together to figure out the needs of transgender community.
And we've been, the wonderful Dick Gottfried has certainly been on our side. Many elected officials have been very kind to the transgender community.
And a new generation of transgender men and women are coming to fruition, and they will be able to start getting access to real power and authority and funding, which will help their organizations
Yes, but they
grow.
couldn't have done it without us.
And they understand that, and they are exceedingly grateful that we've done that.
I know. People asked to shake my hand because of it. Whatever. But anyway, I'm Diana Montford. This has been the Diana Montford Show. Shake the hand that shook the hand. Woo. Anyway, my guest has been the truly fabulous Miss Melissa Sklarz, New York State's first transgender politician, and really a special person. And she really is. And I'm Diana Montford, and you have no idea how special I am. Want to see me pee up a rope? No. Oh, God, how could I be so crude? Oh, because that's me, you know. Anyway, I love you a lot, even though, damn, I'm a dirty broad. And anyway, I love you a lot, and I will see you next time. And you take real good care of yourself, because, honey, we're a team, and I love you a lot. And I want you to be safe and happy and well. And I'll see you next time. Love you a lot. Bye.